I recently quit my full-time job to focus on my design studio and start building digital products while traveling and exploring new places. After months of debating whether this was the right thing to do, my partner and I are finally making the move. In this video, I'll walk you through everything I did to plan on starting my digital nomad journey and how I booked and organized my flights and accommodations for my very first adventure to South Korea. And in the end, I'll share a complete cost breakdown of how much it all cost me. I've been dreaming about this digital nomad life since early 2024, and this year I finally took the leap. So if you're just starting your digital nomad journey, here are 3 quick tips to help you plan and organize your adventure. First, map up your initial destinations. You don't need to start planning every single country straight away, but having an idea of the first 2-3 countries initially will help you start looking into flights, accommodations, visas, and everything you really need to start your journey. Next, set yourself a deadline. Seriously, without a deadline, it's easy to keep putting off the trip. I wanted to do this since early 2024, and it took me over a year and a half to truly commit, so give yourself a deadline. And finally, give yourself a target budget per country. This is crucial for filtering your searches. Prices can vary widely, so knowing what you're comfortable spending will help you find the right options. So do your math first. So for my first trip, I chose South Korea. I had already visited as a tourist and absolutely loved it. So I had a good feel for the country's vibes, the people, the culture, the food. I had loved it as a tourist, and I just wanted to experience what it's like living there as a local. It is also good timing as South Korea is introducing new workstation visas for digital nomads. So it allows you to stay in the country for up to 2 years. Now there are some minimum requirements which I won't detail here, but I'll include links in the description so you can check it out if you plan to stay there for a long period of time. So once you know where you're going, the next step is to plan your accommodation. I had planned to stay in South Korea for about 2.5 months, and I wanted to use that time to explore as much as I possibly could of the country. However, one thing I was sure about is I absolutely didn't want to be carrying my luggages from a place to another. So what I decided in the end was to spend a month and a half in Seoul, where I would book an accommodation there and then plan small trips in the north of the country. And then I would book a place in Busan for a month, and I would use that time to explore the south of the country. Now, in terms of renting in South Korea, there are basically 2 main types of rents. The first one is Johnson, where you pay a huge amount of money at the beginning of the tenancy, and that represents about 50 to 80% of the house value, which is huge. But then you don't pay monthly rents, and then you get your money back at the end of the tenancy. Or Wholesome, where you pay a smaller amount of deposit and then you pay monthly rent. Since I wasn't planning to stay longer than 3 months in South Korea, I really didn't want to go through the hassle of, giving deposits and dealing with landlords. And I also figured out that no landlord would want to enter in a contract for 3 months. That's why I started looking into co-living places and serviced apartments in Seoul. What worked best, actually, was checking out Reddit groups. People there tend to recommend places you might not easily find if you were to just Google it. And through those groups, I found companies like Episode Stays, Fraser Suits, and a few more. This is where having a target budget becomes really important, because you'll notice that monthly accommodation prices can get really high really fast. When doing your research, you'll also notice that a lot of these co-living spaces have a pretty similar application process. So in theory, you pick your dates and the place where you would like to stay, then you make a payment, and then they send you a contract to sign within 2 days of receiving your payment. And then you usually get the check-in details about 3 days before your moving date. And some accommodations also only offer monthly reservations, so from the first of the month to the last day of the month. So you'll need to make sure that you book something that aligns with your target start date. Also, before booking your accommodation, make sure to check the flight options to find the cheapest best fit. I really think it's very important to nail down both your accommodation and your flight before booking anything, so this way, you have the flexibility of tweaking dates if ever needed. For flights, I usually use Google Flights to compare and find what works best. I actually enjoy flights with long layovers so I can explore new places during the transit time. But this time, the main flight options were with airlines I hadn't flown with before, like China Air, and their online reviews were, to be honest, pretty negative. So I decided it was safer to stick with an airline I knew, like Lufthansa. So this way I could avoid, hopefully, any delays and headaches before even starting my digital nomad life. So I figured I could always, plan small trips while I was in South Korea. It's worth mentioning that I started to plan for this trip quite late. My goal was to move out by November the 20th, but I started looking for flights and accommodations only late September. And as you can imagine, that's not ideal at all. So when you have a deadline in mind, start planning as early as possible. So this way you can have a wider choice in terms of accommodations and cheaper flights as well. Now let's go through the full booking process. I'm not going to bore you with booking flights because, as you can imagine, it's pretty straightforward, just like booking any other flight. So I booked mine with Lufthansa directly on their website. Now let's look at booking an accommodation in Seoul. After doing some research and comparing different options, prices and locations, I decided to go with episode stays. They have good reviews, different locations around Seoul, and they just happened to open a new location that was priced just right for my 1.5 month stay. Episode Stay offers both long-term and short-term accommodations across Seoul, and the cool thing is, once you book a place in one location, you can actually access all their community areas, workstations and lounges across all their locations in Seoul. And also for short stays, the bills are included in the price, which is pretty good. So let me walk you through how I actually booked my accommodation with episode stays. As I mentioned before, booking a serviced apartment in South Korea is like using booking.com to reserve a hotel for a holiday. But for me, I did not feel comfortable sending a large amount of payment to a provider I had never used before. So I needed some sort of reassurance. So I sent them an email with all my questions, and it took them a full 3 weeks to get back to me, which, to be honest, was pretty slow. But once they responded, they were actually really helpful and professional. So I went ahead and booked the accommodation that fit my budget and was in a location I was happy with. So the booking process itself is pretty simple. You just follow the steps on Episode's website. So first you select your preferred dates, which will show the available accommodations for those dates. And then you select the accommodation where you would like to stay and proceed with creating an account. So you can create an account using your email address or your phone number. You then have to fill in your personal details and proceed to make a payment. So you can make the payment, which is, by the way, in USD only. So you can make a payment via PayPal or a bank card, which also happen to be a PayPal payment anyway. And then once the payment goes through, you get a confirmation email. Now, on Episode's website, they said that they send the contract within 2 days of getting the payment. But in my case, that didn't happen at all. Instead, I had to wait another 3 weeks, during which I sent them a bunch of emails that just went unanswered. So I tried contacting them via Facebook Messenger, Kakao Talk, which then I realized I couldn't even use because I don't have a South Korean number. And as last resort, I messaged them on Instagram. They did get back to me pretty quickly on Instagram and arranged for the contract to be sent out the next day. So the contract came through Modusign, which is basically the South Korean version of DocuSign. So I read through the contract, but just for my own peace of mind, I also uploaded it to ChatGPT and asked it to summarize it and, point out any red flags I should be aware of, just in case things were to go wrong. And then all I had to do was fill in the details and sign it. And that was it. Now, on Episode's website, it says that they send the moving instructions the day before your moving date. However, I still send them a message on Instagram letting them know that, I've signed the contract and double checking that I would get the check-in email the day before the check-in date, but they never got back to me. I recently got to learn that Episode had issues with their system, and so they were not getting all their emails, which is what caused a delay in their responses. So hopefully that should be better now. Overall, the booking process can be quite stressful. You've made a payment and you want to be sure that you haven't been scammed, and either you get your accommodation or your money back. So it's very important to remain calm and make sure you choose a company that is Leggett has a good reputation and is hopefully trustworthy. I also think it's quite important to have a travel insurance in place before booking anything, just in case things were to go wrong. With flights and accommodation sorted in Seoul, it was time to look into Busan. You might prefer wait and book something while you are in South Korea directly, but for me, I really wanted to have the peace of mind, so I preferred booking everything in advance. And the good thing is, if you're looking into hotels, most of the hotels actually allow you to reserve a place, but then make the payment directly at the property, so this way you don't have to pay anything upfront. I might not have searched properly, but I couldn't really find any convenient serviced apartments in Busan. So to keep things simple, I just booked an apart hotel on Booking.com. The one thing I would really say about booking a hotel in Busan is to pay close attention to the location. Busan is the second biggest city in South Korea. So if you're looking for convenience, maybe book a place near the train station, because it's very close to the port and it makes it easy to get around the whole city and also gives you access to the rest of South Korea. Bear in mind that Google Maps doesn't work in South Korea, so you will need to find your way around using South Korean apps like Kakao Map or Naver Map, and honestly, I don't find them as handy as Google Maps. I stayed close to the train station when I visited Busan for the first time, but I only was there for 2 days, so I didn't really have time to fully explore and ended up doing a rush tour of everything Busan had to offer. This time, I wanted to stay closer to the Hyundai to really explore that area properly. And since I was already familiar with the city, I felt more comfortable staying a bit farther, from the main transportation hubs. Not that it doesn't mean I'm not going to get lost, but hey ho. So I booked a apart hotel near Hyundai Beach and I will be staying there for a month. But again, for Busan, there's no magic trick. Just find a location you're happy with and book a hotel that fits your budget. Then one last thing to do is book the onward flight to the next destination. I just really didn't want to be in a situation where the airline or the border control police ask for a proof that I'll be leaving the country and I have nothing to show. And then my trip gets cancelled before even it starts. So book your onward flights. So I prefer to play it safe and book my flight to my next trip, Japan, already. And if by any chance the accommodation I book in Japan doesn't quite fit with my flight schedule, I guess it's okay to just stay in a hotel for a day or two. But I'll talk more about the trip to Japan in a different video. Now with everything booked, let's see how much it all cost me. But before I get into the numbers, if you find the video helpful so far, make sure to like it and drop a comment. It would really help the channel grow. Also, on a side note, as I mentioned earlier, I will be traveling with my partner. So all the numbers I will be giving, it's for 2 people. So I booked a one-way economy flight with Lufthansa from Birmingham in the UK to Seoul in South Korea with about 2.5 hours layovers in Munich. And the total cost for the flight was about $1,200 for 2 people. So roughly about $600 per person. For Seoul, our serviced apartment with episode stayed cost about $2,900 for 1.5 month stay, and the total included the bills and there were no deposit required. Note that we had to make the payment upfront in order to secure the booking. For Busan, we booked an apart hotel on Booking.com for 29 stays, and so the total for that was about $1,600. And because we booked through Booking.com, we selected the option of paying directly at the property. So this way we did not need to make the payment upfront. And then finally, the outbound flight to Japan was booked with Jeju Air. So for a flight from Busan to Osaka for 2 people with 20 kg luggages included for both costed about $290. And that's a wrap on how I planned, booked and budgeted my very first digital nomad trip to South Korea. I will also be sharing videos about what's daily life like in Seoul, how I booked my accommodation in Japan, and how to build digital products while traveling. So subscribe so you don't miss any of it. And if ever there is anything I forgot to mention or if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the comments and I'll get back to you. Have a good day!